Good evening from New York. I am Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Journeys. Welcome to another edition. My guest tonight is Mrs. Nicole Dyer Griffith. She's the originator of the O2N Way and a registered nurse by training. However, she placed her nursing career on hold to go on to represent Trinidad and Tobago in the 1999 Miss Universe competition and won the Best National Costume. After this experience, Nicole worked in the petrochemical industry for over 9 years. She honed her career in communications, marketing, and public relations after obtaining her master's degree in that field. Nicole subsequently served as Group Corporate Communications Manager at the headquarters of the ANSA Macau Group of Companies and then entered the field of politics. In 2007 and 2010, Nicole entered the political race and eventually served as a government senator and parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Communications. She served as chairman of the Congress of the People, a political party, then later moved on and formed the Alliance of Independence, where she currently served as the interim political leader. I'm going to bring Nicole Dyer on. Nicole, good afternoon and welcome to CWS. Could you check your volume? I can hardly hear you.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you a little better.
Hearing me better now?
Yes, that's much better. Well, Nicole, I want to just get right into it. Behind the accomplishments and the awards and titles, how would you describe this woman many have come to know as Nicole Dyer?
That's a very good question. I think that the best words would be used to describe me would be a go-getter, someone who does not give up, and someone who does not understand no.
Understand? No. I like that. And if you were not doing what you're doing today, what career would you like to have tried?
Medicine, it would have been in the field of medicine because that was originally the plan for me to go on to study medicine as a medical doctor, but I segued into music. So if it wasn't everything else that I'm doing now, it probably would have been as a medical doctor.
Say, I want to go into your early timeline. Can you give us a glimpse of what life was like growing up at the ages of 9 and 16?
I would think I can remember some of the time. Let's see. I had a very happy, regular, normal childhood. I have two brothers with whom I had to be very tough around because, not being around the many younger women along with myself, I had to fend for myself, so to speak, with brothers. So that afforded me much of the opportunity to become the tough person that I am, part of me. One of the things that I remember quite early on in my childhood is that I always loved business. I always loved being in charge. I always loved taking control. I always loved having the opportunity or finding the opportunity that I could afford others to see where they can become and what they can become. So that's how when I remember from around 9, whenever my mother would send us to my aunt's home in the country in Trinidad, I would fruits and a host of things and develop a stall and have my brothers and my cousins be the salesperson and why I will manage the business from behind and make sure that everything went relatively smoothly. That became a general pattern as life got. Around 16, but by 14 years old, I had already entered the field of fashion performance with Richard Young. And in that field, from around the age of 14, I was doing fashion performance or modeling across the region, already having probably modeled in the majority of the Caribbean islands by that time. So by 16, I was a seasoned model, and I was also finishing some of my PhD and A-level examinations at that time.
Mm. What is your favorite memory of your parents as a child?
There were so many. Like every other regular family, we had our ups and downs. Unfortunately, my parents separated at some point in time, but Christmas was always very special and continues to be very special to me, so that it would always be the Christmas traditions. And up to this day, Selwyn, I continue those Christmas traditions. Some of those traditions include ensuring that you have a new pajama to go to bed with on Christmas Eve. That everything is organized on Christmas Eve. Your house is clean, you're smelling things, cooking, the ham, baking, everything is happening. And when you wake up Christmas morning, I have always been one to assume the role of Santa Claus to hand out gifts. And so as far back as I can remember, that has been my role and continues to be my role today.
Tell us about the women in your life who helped shape the person you have become today.
So there's so many. It starts obviously with my mother. My mother, I think, for me, is one of those women that you would look at them and they may not be very loud and they may not have much to say, but they are a force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
And she really epitomizes that to me and to anybody who comes into contact with her. She continues today to be chief executive officer of a security company, and so having to deal with hundreds of men, that really shapes who she is. And in shaping who she is, she has taught that and passed that on to shape who I am. I have always stood by and looked at my mother. And one of the quotes that she said to me, Selwyn, she said that she wanted to have on her grave is, "You may think I am weak, but do not mistake my kindness for weakness." And I will always remember that because I have to honor that for her. So she was one of them. The other one would have been my late grandmother, who people always tend to align with Queen Elizabeth for some reason. She looked very similar to Queen Elizabeth. Her mannerisms were very British, very English, very old school. And she spoke with a very thick British accent. And I call her Auntie Mummy. Auntie Mummy, really, it is when you look at me and you look at the way I carry myself, it's because of what she would have instilled in me in terms of what is the right and proper thing to do and the right and proper way to conduct yourself at all times. So that would be my grandmother. And then, of course, as I grew throughout my life, there were so many women that would have had a part to play. I have, as far as I can remember, always surrounded myself with older women, so that whereas you find persons would have a number of female friends around their age group that they would go out with and hang with, I always found myself surrounded by older women who would adopt me, per se, and would be able to guide me through different circumstances in life. There are so many along the way, as there are many today. And I suppose being around them would have influenced a significant extent where I am today and to a significant extent the conception of them.
And I know I'm going to jump forward a little bit, but you've gone on to champion the cause of women, to start your own organization, O2, and we'll get to that in a moment, to empower women. But while we're on the topic of these women who have helped to shape you, your mother and your grandmother especially, would you say that they have contributed to this passion you have for empowering women today?
Oh, absolutely. They definitely would have contributed significantly to that, as well as my experiences that I made mention along the way. Some of those experiences, Selwyn, were not so nice experiences that I would have had, having to kind of break through certain glass ceilings, being relatively young, being black, being female in industries that were not necessarily very welcoming to someone with those demographics. So that some of these circumstances that I had to experience myself also assisted in projecting me in the direction of women's issues. It's just one of the things that I'm very passionate about, but it certainly is a very important one.
As I peruse your career path, I realize that you have always held leadership and management positions. What drives you to aim to the top?
I am extremely and supremely competitive. If there is one thing that I always say I have to work on is my competitive spirit. I am competitive of course. I have to always be at my best. I'm a perfectionist. I will admit that. I'm a competitive perfectionist. So that combination really gives you a type personality. So I am type A personality, of course. And therefore it really, I don't know anything else but always going to achieve the best that I can.
What are most people surprised to learn about you when they get to know you?
But I am just a regular, cool, funny girl. Yeah, many people, and it is if they approach me, if they don't know me and they see me, they would think that, oh my God, she is unapproachable, I can't talk to her and all that. Some people get that perception based on, when they see persons with public life, you tend to create your own perceptions of them,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what they are. So when they cross that barrier, if they do, or if they speak to a friend of mine, then a friend will tell them, she is the coolest, nicest, funniest person you will ever meet. You won't believe that until you meet the person behind the name, and then you say, it's so nice, it's so cool, it's so this, it's so that. So it's always very funny. I almost have many different personas. I have the public persona with different roles because of the many different roles that I have to assume. The public persona for politics is a very different persona for fashion performance. It's a very different persona for business, a different persona for the foundation that I run. And so I have to manage a number of different persons in this one body.
So I want to go to 1999 Miss Universe competition. What was it like to place your nursing career on hold and enter into this arena?
It was a crazy decision. When I was very young. I was one of the youngest supervisors at my time, and I was in the middle of a number of significant changes in my life. I did most of my youth practice in Tobago, which is the Twin Islands, Trinidad. So I had left home, left my mother, my brothers, and said, okay, I'm going across to Tobago to practice music by myself. And I did that for a year and half a year and a half. And then, whilst doing that, I was afforded a number of different opportunities, a number of different scholarships, and many things started coming my way. And in the midst of all that, I remember very vividly when Mrs. Williams from Trinidad and Tobago winning the Miss Universe competition. And I recall that very night, whilst I sat in my hospital room by myself on my bed, calling one of the directors of the management of management at that time, Richard Young, and telling him that I am ready to enter the competition because they were asking me about the competition before, and it just wasn't my thing. But for whatever reason, I felt that this is the time for me to do it, and being who I am, it it happened. So I dropped everything, which any logical thinking person would say you have to be crazy to drop opportunities, drop a promising career, drop a good salary at your age, to come back to Trinidad to enter a competition. But it was something that I think at that point in time I needed to.
What did you learn about yourself during that experience?
Wow, I learned a number of things. The most important thing that I learned is that there is a God. Every now and again, you come into an experience that reminds you that there is a God and that He watches over you, even though sometimes the chips are down. It's always good to remember that. And that experience really is something that I would have to write an entire book about because there were so many ups and downs, and it is something that I have never really spoken fully about in public, but at some point I will because of the tone of the experience in so many different ways. But thankfully, again, I was surrounded by many very supportive persons so that the experience, even though it was filled with a number of different things that still colored, it was also a very promising experience. And I will always encourage persons to participate in because it develops your character beyond what you thought your character was at that point in time.
And you believe in the scripture, be still and know I am God. Is that where all this come from? Your faith in and your strong belief in God?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And there were so many instances in my short life on this earth that I was afforded the opportunity to recognize and remember and be reminded that there is a God. That I will admit I don't read the Bible very often, even though every New Year's Eve I make a promise that is going to be one of my resolutions. I do that. But there are so many instances I don't leave my bed on mornings without thanking God for affording me the opportunity another day. For blessing my son every time he goes off to school because I know that there is one. And I know his power, and I have felt his power, and
Mm-hmm.
his power has guided my life. I'll tell you a story. After the Miss Trinidad and Tobago experience, on my first day to work in Petrocrin, which is the petroleum company of Trinidad and Tobago, I was driving down one of our highways, and just out of the blue, I started swerving and ran completely off the highway into a ditch, which in itself was very traumatic because just imagine a car swerving at however fast I was going and straight into a ditch. Started doing, those eights that you do on the street. And I came out, kind of dragged myself out, having this accident in the ditch, and nobody stopped to help. Cars were just zooming by. Some would slow down to look at this car looking at ditch, and nobody came to help. And one gentleman came and he helped me and he helped push the car back on the street and asked for a lift in the direction that I was heading. So obviously, I seeing that he was the only person who supported me at that point in time, it was nothing to give him a lift. Of course, I'll give you a lift.
Mm-hmm.
Only to be thrown out of the vehicle in the middle of the highway whilst it was driving at about 80 miles per hour and rolling on the highway and having to duck out of the way of another oncoming truck. I mean, my life is drama. You can make a movie out of my life. And it's only when I'm only knowing the damage that was done when a very kind passers-by stopped and picked me up, all bloodied, and when they started screaming, and then I realized just how, just what was done. And but here I am today.
Wow.
Perfectly fine, and that's just one of the many, many, many experiences that you know that God is there.
Do you remember when you were actually introduced to politics?
Yes, it was in 2006, late 2006, when at that point in time I looked at my son and I said that I was not particularly happy with the way this country was going, and I felt that instead of sitting on the sidelines and making comments about everything, why not get involved and see how best I can apply whatever I bring to the table to make the change that I would like to see for my son and for his children. And at that point in time, there was a big entity on the political landscape called Congress of People, which offered dynamic ideas, bright people, and it really looked like something that I wanted to get involved in and that I could get involved in. And so I started having conversations with the community, and then they heard me speak and they put me on a platform. And after that public meeting in the school, I remember, school in London, where one of the communities I grew up. And after that, the rest is history. I became the public relations officer of the party. Then I became another executive member of the party, the public relations, the communications secretary of the party, and then I became the chairman of the party, while the party eventually came into government.
But in 2010, I believe, that's when you were appointed to the senator. That was a rapid development. Were you surprised that? What was your reaction actually when you were given this appointment?
Well, it's about time.
Oh.
Honest, that was the honest reaction. It's about time. Between 2006 up to the point of 2010, I was very actively involved. We've had 2 general elections in a very short space of time in the country, so that I had the opportunity to really learn from the best in every sphere of politics. I studied, I'm a quick study, and I absorb information like nobody else can. And so when I was afforded the opportunity by the Prime Minister at that point in time, who was Cabinet Party Secretary, I was really humbled, but I was very excited because the Senate is the upper house in our parliamentary system. And to me, in order to be placed in the upper house really was an honor. It was an honor to be now having this challenge of learning something new, because I'm not a lawyer. So that in terms of having to debate legislation, that was a new paradigm for me. So it offered me a new opportunity, a new challenge, and I was very excited by the possibility that presented itself to contribute to the making of law for government life.
Nicole, please tell us the best way you can. Why politics, and when did this intimacy with politics actually develop?
Well, it's very honestly, as I mentioned before, it was in 2006, and primarily because of my son. And I did not want my son to grow up in a nation where I felt there was some measure of inadequacy. And if I could have come off my armchair and become a part of the process to build my nation, then so be it. That is what I have to do.
Is
And that has been done.
is this part of your messaging to women that you're seeking to empower, that become part of the solution rather than sit back and take what is handed out to you?
Absolutely, and not only women, Talvin, because I'm the chairman of a foundation called G3 Foundation, and what we do is a similar type of empowerment for young persons between the ages of 8 to 18, where we host something called a Soaring Eagles program. It's a 7-week training, like skills management training program, where we teach conflict resolution, anger management, financial management, self-esteem, and those types of things to young persons. Because even though much of my focus is women, because I was kind of thrust in that direction with the political things, having to speak on issues related to women on international fora. But I also am very passionate for young people.
Mm-hmm.
And that mix is always there. So whatever opportunities I take to marry the two, to empower persons, whosoever you may be, to show that God, we are all made in the image and likeness of God. And if we would afford ourselves the opportunity to be what He would afford us to be, and can you even imagine what can happen if it is good just to scratch the surface of that?